Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every book has vanished. Every school notebook is blank. Every passport, birth certificate, dollar bill, legal contract, handwritten letter, and historical document has simply disappeared. Within hours, governments would struggle to function. Businesses would grind to a halt. Centuries of knowledge would be reduced to memory alone. It sounds impossible, but for most of human history, this wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. Long before libraries filled entire cities, before newspapers landed on doorsteps, before novels, maps, blueprints, and diplomas existed, humanity faced a problem that threatened civilization itself. People could speak, people could remember, but memory dies with people, and civilizations needed something that didn't. The search for a way to preserve knowledge would change the world forever. Not gold, not gunpowder, not even electricity. A thin, fragile sheet made from crushed plants would become one of the most powerful inventions in human history. This is the story of paper, the invention that rewrote human memory. Long before paper existed, information was surprisingly heavy. If you lived in ancient Mesopotamia nearly 5,000 years ago, your shopping list wasn't written on paper. It was carved into wet clay. Workers used reed styluses to press tiny wedge-shaped symbols into soft tablets. Once dried in the sun or baked in a kiln, those tablets could survive for thousands of years. Many actually did. Archaeologists can still read business contracts, tax records, poems, and even school homework from civilizations that disappeared long before the Roman Empire was born. The system worked, but it had one enormous flaw. Clay was incredibly heavy. Imagine carrying an entire library made of bricks. Knowledge existed, but it couldn't travel easily. Meanwhile, along the Nile River, ancient Egyptians discovered something far more practical: papyrus. Made by slicing the papyrus plant into thin strips, layering them, pressing them together, and drying them, papyrus was lighter, flexible, and easier to transport than clay. For centuries, it became the writing material of kings, merchants, priests, and scholars. The great libraries of Egypt were filled with papyrus scrolls. Greek philosophers studied from it. Roman officials governed an empire with it. It seemed revolutionary, but papyrus had weaknesses. It grew mainly in Egypt. It cracked in dry climates. It absorbed moisture. It wore out with constant handling. And because Egypt controlled most production, papyrus became a valuable strategic resource. Knowledge depended on geography. Then there was parchment. Made from specially prepared animal skins, parchment was stronger than papyrus and could last for centuries. Beautiful medieval manuscripts still survive today because monks copied them onto parchment with astonishing care. But parchment came at an enormous cost. Creating a single large book could require the skins of hundreds of animals. Imagine trying to educate an entire civilization that way. Books became treasures. Only kings, wealthy merchants, monasteries, and powerful institutions could afford large collections. Knowledge remained rare, expensive, exclusive. Human civilization desperately needed something better. The breakthrough came not from Europe, but from China. Around the beginning of the 2nd century, during the Han Dynasty, an imperial court official named Cai Lun is traditionally credited with improving a remarkable new material. Instead of carving into stone, instead of pressing clay, instead of using costly animal skin, he experimented with something radically different: old fishing nets, tree bark, hemp fibers, rags, plant waste, materials that most people considered worthless. These fibers were soaked, beaten into a watery pulp, spread into a thin layer, and left to dry. When the water disappeared, something extraordinary remained: a light, flexible sheet, strong enough to write on. It wasn't math, it was engineering. For the first time, ordinary plant fibers became a permanent home for human ideas. Historians still debate whether paper existed in simpler forms before Cai Lun refined it. Archaeological discoveries suggest early paper-like materials may have appeared decades earlier, but Cai Lun's improvements transformed paper from an experiment into a practical technology that could be produced on a much larger scale. And that changed everything. The Chinese government quickly realized what they had created. Paper wasn't just convenient, it was powerful. Governments depend on records, taxes, military orders, laws, population counts, trade. Paper made administration dramatically easier. Soon, official documents spread across the empire faster than ever before. Education expanded. Scholars copied classics more efficiently. Poetry flourished. Art evolved. Paper became more than a writing surface. It became part of Chinese culture itself. Artists painted breathtaking landscapes on it. Families crafted lanterns. Engineers developed paper fans. Religious ceremonies incorporated paper offerings. Even the earliest forms of paper money appeared in China, centuries before Europe imagined such an idea. A simple sheet had quietly become one of civilization's greatest tools. For hundreds of years, China guarded the secret carefully. Other civilizations admired Chinese goods, like silk and porcelain, but paper remained one of the empire's greatest technological advantages. Then, history took an unexpected turn. In the 8th century, armies from the Tang dynasty clashed with forces of the Abbasid Caliphate near the Talas River in Central Asia. The battle itself changed political boundaries only briefly, but its consequences reached far beyond the battlefield. According to historical tradition, Chinese craftsmen skilled in papermaking were captured after the conflict. Whether every detail of the story is accurate remains debated among historians. What is clear is that soon afterward, papermaking knowledge appeared in the Islamic world, and once it arrived, it spread rapidly. Cities like Samarkand became famous for paper production, then Baghdad, then Damascus, then Cairo. Islamic scholars embraced paper with astonishing enthusiasm. The timing couldn't have been better. The Islamic Golden Age was beginning. Scientists studied astronomy. Doctors wrote medical encyclopedias. Mathematicians developed algebra. Philosophers translated Greek classics. Libraries expanded into some of the largest collections on Earth. Paper became the silent partner behind one of history's greatest intellectual explosions. Ideas could now travel faster than armies. Eventually, paper crossed another frontier, Europe. At first, many Europeans distrusted it. Parchment had prestige. Paper seemed cheap, fragile, unworthy. But economics has a way of changing minds. Paper cost far less. Merchants loved it. Accountants loved it. Governments loved it. Universities loved it. Little by little, skepticism faded. By the late Middle Ages, paper mills appeared across Italy, Spain, France, and beyond. Knowledge was becoming more affordable. Then came a machine that multiplied its power beyond imagination. Around 1450, Johannes Gutenberg combined movable metal type with the widespread availability of paper to create one of history's greatest technological partnerships. Printing itself had existed earlier in Asia. Movable type had been explored centuries before, but Europe's growing paper industry made mass printing economically practical on an unprecedented scale. Before Gutenberg, copying one book by hand could take months, sometimes years. After the printing press, hundreds could be produced, then thousands. Suddenly, ideas no longer belonged only to the elite. Ordinary merchants owned books, students built personal libraries, religious debates spread across continents, scientific discoveries reached strangers separated by thousands of miles. The Renaissance accelerated. The Reformation exploded. The scientific revolution gained momentum. It's difficult to imagine any of these movements unfolding the same way without inexpensive paper. Every printed page became another spark in humanity's expanding conversation. Centuries passed. Paper evolved again. Demand kept growing. People wanted newspapers, letters, novels, maps, school books. Governments required endless records. Businesses generated contracts by the millions. But there was a problem. Traditional paper relied heavily on cotton and linen rags. There simply weren't enough old clothes to satisfy the world's hunger for knowledge. Inventors searched desperately for alternatives. Eventually, they found one hidden inside forests: wood. At first glance, trees seemed impossible. Wood contains lignin, making it tougher than cloth fibers. But new industrial techniques broke wood into pulp suitable for papermaking. The result changed manufacturing forever. Paper became dramatically cheaper. Factories produced enormous rolls around the clock. Literacy surged. Newspapers reached ordinary families every morning. Children attended schools with affordable textbooks. Governments printed forms by the millions. Businesses kept records on an unimaginable scale. Paper had become the infrastructure of modern civilization. Then came another surprise: money. Most people assume banknotes are made from ordinary paper. Many aren't. Modern currencies often use special cotton-based materials or advanced polymer substrates because they must survive years of folding, moisture, and handling while resisting counterfeiters. Yet the very idea of carrying wealth in something as light as a sheet traces back to paper's revolutionary impact. The same invention that preserved stories eventually transformed economics, and it didn't stop there. Think about some of humanity's greatest achievements. Blueprints guided the construction of skyscrapers. Sheet music preserved masterpieces. Medical records saved lives. Engineering drawings launched airplanes. Scientific notebooks recorded experiments that changed our understanding of the universe. Love letters crossed oceans. Children drew their first pictures. Families kept treasured photographs inside albums. Paper quietly accompanied almost every important human experience. Even today, in an age of smartphones and cloud storage, paper refuses to disappear. Many countries still require physical legal documents. Artists continue sketching with pencil on paper. Students often remember information better when writing notes by hand. Researchers still fill laboratory notebooks. Writers draft ideas in journals. Books remain cherished despite digital alternatives. Paper adapted instead of surrendering, but its future raises difficult questions. Billions of trees are harvested every year for paper products. Modern forestry has become more sustainable in many regions, with managed forests replacing harvested trees, while recycling has reduced pressure on natural resources. Still, balancing demand with environmental responsibility remains an ongoing challenge. Meanwhile, digital technology promises a paperless future. Emails replaced countless letters. Online banking reduced printed statements. Electronic books fit entire libraries into a pocket. Cloud storage can preserve information across continents. Yet every new technology introduces fresh vulnerabilities. Hard drives fail. Servers crash. File formats become obsolete. Cyber attacks erase data in seconds. Ironically, some of the oldest paper documents remain readable after hundreds of years, while many digital files created only decades ago are already difficult to access. Sometimes, the oldest technology proves surprisingly resilient, and perhaps that's paper's greatest lesson. Paper was never just about writing. It changed who could learn, who could teach, who could remember, who could challenge authority, who could dream beyond a single lifetime. Without paper, history would have been smaller, science slower, education rarer, freedom harder to spread. The next time you open a notebook, receive a receipt, flip through a novel, sign a document, or watch a child draw their first picture, remember that you're holding far more than a thin sheet of pressed fibers. You're holding one of humanity's greatest inventions, a fragile invention that made our memories stronger than time itself.